Well, hello out there in podcast land, and welcome back to the Front Row Network podcast, the podcast for people who actually like movies. And welcome to an episode of Full Disclosure, where we take a recent movie release, we talk all about it, we spoil the living hell out of it, and tell you whether or not it's worth your time. I'm Lou Hare, and I'm not the host of Full Disclosure. That normally goes to our fearless leader, Jeremy Geckner. I am here. Why am I here? Well, because this isn't just any movie, and this is not just any podcast. This podcast has been infected, ladies and gentlemen. A symbiote has taken over Full Disclosure, and it has revealed the guilt inside. And so this is a hybrid of Full Disclosure and Guilty Pleasures, because we are talking about Venom.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm going to apologize right off the bat, because I almost can't now say Venom without saying it the way Eminem says it.
Venom.
So it's time to go
get him. Cargo. Venom.
So, yes, I am joined by two regulars from the Guilty Pleasures podcast. Please welcome, first and foremost, Christian Crosby. How you doing, Christian?
I'm doing pretty good, Lou. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being willing to see this movie in the theater and then talk about it.
Well, Lou, let me interrupt you. I was going to see this movie if this podcast existed or not, because from the minute that trailer came out, I was on fucking board. There you go.
Perfect. And also joining us, another regular to Guilty Pleasures. Please welcome back Sam Dabina. How's it going, Sam?
Hi, guys. Good. I've got this really awesome, sexy phlegm voice going on with, it's October in Chicago. So that means it was 80 degrees yesterday and it's 40 degrees today. So, just getting that good old fall cold.
It's just your Venom voice, Sam.
I was just going to say that. I'm really channeling my inner Tom Hardy.
All right, so let's get right into it. And by the way, as always with Full Disclosures, this is a spoiler zone. We will be talking about this movie in great detail. So if you are averse to that, please bookmark this, pause it now, and come back, because trust me, you're going to want to hear what we got to say once you see this movie, because it's bonkers. But if you have been forewarned, to come on into the spoiler zone, because we will be talking spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so let's get spoilers. Normally we start with everybody with somebody who dies, but I don't know. Venom dies and then comes back. We'll talk about it. We'll unpack that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. I had forgotten that part. His pseudo death. I'm sorry. Keep going.
Yes. Okay, so let's start with this, because to give everybody a reference point who's listening, I had no familiarity with the character of Venom beyond Spider-Man 3. So I came into this cold. I know, Topher Grace was my Venom until just a few days ago. So
Topher Grace was nobody's Venom.
He wasn't even Topher Grace's Venom. So that's my only frame of reference for the character. Christian, I know you have a little bit more familiarity. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I had there was a trade paperback compendium of Todd McFarlane. I'm sure you guys know Spawn, and that's his thing. And he does some other stuff. He created Venom, or at least drew Venom, and was the artist on Spider-Man. His run of that storyline of the symbiote, Spider-Man bringing the symbiote to Earth. He rejects the symbiote, and then the symbiote gets mad. And then Eddie Brock was scorned by Peter Parker, and they joined forces to essentially take down Spider-Man and ruin his life. So,
okay, interesting. All right, good. Sam, how about you? Did you have any prior knowledge of Venom before this?
No, I really dislike superhero movies, and admittedly, the last one I saw was probably The Dark Knight.
Wow.
That series. I've never seen what are those? Thor, And I've never seen the Avengers. I'm not into them. But I'll tell you what I am into. Tom Hardy. So, as soon as I heard this was coming out, I'm like, oh, fine, I'll go see it. But I'm glad I did.
Good. All right. So let's jump into it right there, because you mentioned the centerpiece to this whole movie. This is Tom Hardy's movie from start to finish. He plays Eddie Brock, and then ultimately Venom. So let's start with Tom Hardy as Venom, because I got a lot of I went on a roller coaster of emotions watching his performance. So Tom Hardy's an English actor, correct? Mm-hmm. I didn't hallucinate that, right? Okay.
Yeah.
That makes me feel a little bit better, because his accent in this movie, what do we think he's going for in this? What's where because he's kind of going for like it's an American, but like broy.
I thought he was from like a lazy man's Brooklyn. I'm not sure.
I think so. I think he was sort of Boston, New York, sort of. Because I know that it takes place in San Francisco, but they mentioned he was kicked out of New York or whatever.
Maybe like a young John McClane, Bruce Willis kind of. Yeah, I'm a reporter now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I was feeling with it.
Okay, so we meet Eddie, and he's this journalist. Sort of, he goes around the world and kind of does like a 60 Minutes type style reporting.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I know you got to get like a big kind of hulking guy to be your superhero, but Tom Hardy as like a journalist, maybe?
Yeah, as a sexy Charlie Rose.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna edit myself right there. Yeah, it didn't quite land for me the way that maybe it should have been. And I guess they want you to, it felt like they want to remind you, oh yeah, that's kind of what he does through that little montage, and then move away from it as quickly as possible.
It's a terribly assembled montage. At one point, they're playing like the kind of different audio bits and clips of his San Franciscan 60 Minutes or whatever it is. But at one point, he says he has a notepad in his hand. He goes, and I'm told reports that homelessness is, and he looks down at the report and then back up at the camera and he goes, rising. So either Tom Hardy could not remember his line, or he goes, okay, so Eddie Brock is going to stop. He's going to reference his notepad and then say it to the camera.
Just to double check.
This is a really weird thing to do. But yeah, that was included, and it was an odd compendium of weird local news shit.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be, he was supposedly super famous for being, this journalist, and really successful with his company and everything, but I didn't really buy it.
No. There's a lot of things I buy Tom Hardy as, but I couldn't buy Eddie Brock as a journalist, because he's got like that. He's got like he's just got that bro swagger to him that is like, you have never opened a book,
right?
Let alone put pen to paper. I'm not buying that for a second. So thankfully they do move away from it, because I don't buy he would be doing any investigative journalism.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, the sexiest investigative journalist of all time.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, and the most conspicuous like ever. Like, he's going to go to like all these war-torn countries and just kind of blend in when he's reporting.
He's got his fucking
leather
jacket
on. And tight jeans, but he did have a 5 o'clock shadow when he was reporting, so it made him pretty serious.
That's how you know things get gritty.
Right.
No time to shave. We got to talk about the refugees over here. And
isn't he working for a free newspaper? Like, at one point, I think he's going to pick up a copy of his own paper, and the homeless woman, has taken all of them, and she's
Mhm.
like, "You want a copy? You want a copy of a paper? It's $5," and then eventually gives her $20 to show us that he's a good person. But if he's working for a free paper, is able to afford that sort of multi-million-dollar apartment in downtown San Francisco, it's hard for me to kind of piece. I'm willing to go part of the way, but as someone who rents an apartment in a major metropolitan area, it just kind of irritates me.
Yeah, it seems like they weren't too invested or worried about really fleshing out that backstory. They're like, let's just get to the monsters.
Well, and that's the weird thing too for me, because just my quick and dirty thoughts of the movie overall. I absolutely loved the last 90 minutes of this movie, but the first 30 minutes was such a slog. And like, we are wasting our time with backstory that not even the filmmakers seem to give a shit about.
No, like Michelle Williams and their engagement, and they both lose their jobs, and it's like, come on, get to the alien stuff.
Right. Yeah, I timed it in the theater. It is just about exactly an hour of before he puts on the suit, before any fun stuff happens.
Yeah, it's too long.
And this movie's like an hour 50. So man, that's even longer than I thought, I guess. That but yeah, you're exactly. And that is way too long, and that's way too much time giving exposition that you don't even really need. So that was the interesting thing in doing the research for this, because I tried not to read the reviews to not be spoiled, but there were a lot of people who criticized the movie for boring, and I'm like, did you just walk out like halfway through?
Right.
Because
I could see that happening.
I could see, that's my only, because you could say a lot of things about this movie, but at least as far as the second half is concerned, boring is not an adjective that applies.
Nope.
But yeah, so what else we get in that first, let's just get through this first half just so we establish. We learned about Eddie Brock. He's the bro journalist. He's got his girlfriend, Michelle Williams, is an attorney. He ends up stealing information from her about Carlton Drake, who ends up being the villain of the film, and that leads to a breakup. Then we jump 6 months ahead. Oh, I guess we should say also, at the time, we learn about the symbiotes crash landing it's Malaysia, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, okay. So they crash land in Malaysia, and one of them gets loose, and the others are contained. And the one that gets loose gets, that's the bad symbiote of all, we'll get to good versus bad symbiotes later. But so we jump to 6 months later, and now shit starts to get good. Because we learn that Jenny Slate's character Jenny Slate's in this movie, and wasted.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I was so excited to see her, and I was like, oh, and she's going to be like the comic relief. And no.
And not at all. And she's gone so fast.
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm such a fan of hers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she gets like 3 scenes, and then she dies. And, Tom Hardy is left to carry the comedic weight of the film.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Tom Hardy is many things. A comedic actor, he is not.
No.
Yeah, it's pretty unfortunate, because they go for a lot of laughs throughout the movie, and at least when the show that I had seen, they all felt pretty flat.
Okay, so that's the question that I'll posit to you, though, because I laughed my ass off in the second half of this movie, but I wasn't sure if they wanted me to be honest, because I thought. Go ahead, Sam.
Oh, I know. I was gonna say, and I know this is what a lot of the reviews said. It feels like I couldn't decide or figure out what the director wanted the movie to be. I don't know if he wanted it to be a comedy, or because everybody else was so serious and nobody else had any laugh lines really, or everybody, the characters were super serious, and then Tom Hardy's just wackadoodle the whole time, which I liked, and that's what I wanted. I thought everybody should have come up to his level of how he was making the movie work for him. Whereas I thought, who played Carlton Drake? Oh, Riz Ahmed. Yes, he just he fell flat to me. Michelle Williams was super flat to me. I thought Tom Hardy was like just doing everything he could to make it legit.
Yeah, it's like it was like when you see an SNL skit, or and it's just dying to death. So somebody just decides, well, I'm just gonna go for it,
Yeah.
like those Will Ferrell skits when he's bombing. So he's just gonna dial up the weirdness. I feel like Tom Hardy kind of in some of those scenes felt like, okay, no one knows what the fuck we're doing, so I'm just gonna crib a page from the Benicio del Toro school of acting here and just get nutty, because once the symbiote comes in contact with Eddie Brock, it's game on. And that part of the movie is, I don't know what they were going for, but whatever it was, I enjoyed the hell out of.
Yeah, me too.
That was the part I feel like in their pitch to like Sony executives, that's the part that they described. We're like, and then the other symbiote comes, and then they like, we have our symbiote, and it's just like a string of weird symbiote shit, and they're just going out and they're fighting on a fucking rocket ship, and then Michelle Williams is trying to stop something and has it doesn't really matter, and all sorts of that's how they pitched it, is this wild, crazy thing that happens in the third act. And that's where I feel like they put all their effort into, as far as like CGI and action sequences and actual kind of like big set piece moments. That's what it was all about. I think unfortunately the first hour of that movie is them just trying to fill shit in so they can get to the crazy thing that they have at the end.
Right, probably because they couldn't go with the original pitch of, hey, did you see All of Me with Steve Martin and Lily Tomlin? What if that was a superhero movie? Now, hear me out. Hear me out. The Thing inhabits Tom Hardy, and he's got to figure out how his body moves, and he can see him in the mirror, and then they kind of fall in love.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's...
I think the relationship between Tom Hardy and Venom was my favorite part of the movie. Like, yeah, sure, Tom Hardy isn't, the greatest comedic actor, but I feel like he's one of the few actors who could have pulled off the scenes. I mean, basically talking to yourself. And I just thought he was super believable. I mean, as believable as it can be that there's an alien inside of you. And I just found it really charming, and I thought it was really fun.
Yeah. I agree. And I thought he commits to this whole thing.
110%.
Yeah. 100. Yeah. I'd dial that up to like 150, 165. Yeah. He's working hard. And in those moments where he's like actually trying to, as a character, connect to Venom, he's making that work way more than it probably should.
Agreed.
But it starts, and this is the scene I've been dying to talk. Like, as soon as, because I was on the fence with this movie until this scene, and that's the restaurant scene. So for those of you who haven't,
yes, I'm sorry, keep.
Okay, yeah, I forgot about that scene.
So for those of you who haven't seen it, once Eddie gets possessed by Venom, he seeks out Michelle. Has since moved on to this doctor, and he's trying to track her down. And they're at this very fancy restaurant.
Yes.
And Tom Hardy is still trying to figure out what's inside him, and Venom's still working his way through. They haven't really, fully melded yet. And he goes on this tirade where apparently these symbiotes are really hungry. And so he grabs like this chicken and just starts gnawing on a big chicken. he jumps. I'm not making any of this up.
Yeah.
He jumps into a lobster tank to cool himself off, like you do. And then he grabs a lobster and starts eating it raw. That was the moment I realized I'm gonna love this movie, aren't I?
Yeah.
It was so ridiculous, but like we just said, Tom Hardy was so dedicated that I bought every second of it, and I mean, just coming as an actor's standpoint, I was really impressed with how absurd he looked and how he was portraying that. I don't know. I thought he was great.
There's and just to add on to that, I think either shortly before or shortly right after that scene is my favorite moment, where he opens a frozen bag of tater tots.
Yes.
And starts to pour them into his mouth, but ends up just pouring all over his face. Tom Hardy pouring tater tots on his face is maybe the best thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's like it reminded me as a WWE fan of when Steve Austin would chug the beers, and he clearly he didn't feel like drinking them that night, so you just watch it all rolled out. It's like none of that's getting in your mouth, man.
Yeah, Stone Cold Venom.
Stone Cold tater tots.
I feel like I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Well, I feel like and this is kind of like how I envisioned it, is that Tom Hardy goes to his agent and says, I want to play another comic book character, and they go, okay, let's talk to these people. These people go, okay, we have Sony, or we have Venom. What's Venom do? Because I don't know shit about Venom. It is well, he's an alien. It takes over his body. He goes, stop right there. I'm on board. You mean I get to do crazy, weird physical stuff where there's something inside me, and I get to take a character wrestling with emotion, and I get to externalize that on screen and just fucking go nuts. And you give me the director of Gangster Squad, I'm doing it right now. And Eminem's going to do the soundtrack. That's it. I'm done.
Yes.
Give me my vape pen. Let's do this.
Oh yeah, totally. And the funny thing is, he's mentioned that one of the reasons he did this was because his son was a big fan of Venom. And so he said he wanted to do something that his son could watch. So he did something where I bite people's heads off. And I'm like, you're a good dad, Tom Hardy. But yeah, he said, and he would actually refer to his son to help with character notes, which makes a lot of sense as well. Because if you've ever seen a child eat, it's not that far off.
Well, I think and I don't want to be that person that's like, well, in the comics it's supposed to be like this, but I think in the original kind of Venom symbiote thing, Eddie Brock has more in common with kind of like a older powerlifting firefighter type guy. He's really gruff and he's kind of old school and stuff like that, as opposed to this hip young guy. But when Venom or the symbiote takes over his body, there is no sort of rough physical transformation, at least that I remember. I mean, it gets him, and it presumably, I remember the panel, it looks like it's coming down into his mouth and eyes and stuff like that. And then it's over, and then it cuts, and then he's Venom afterwards. But there's no sort of, at least from what I can recall, I have to eat live things immediately, and I have to jump into a lobster tank. Also, quick thing. But the guy that Michelle Williams is cucking him out with is the most sane character in the entire movie.
Oh yeah.
He goes up to Tom Hardy when he's in the fish tank or the lobster tank and he's like, come on, I want to check you out. There's something wrong with you. Like, we need to stop the cameras. There's something wrong with my friend Tom. We're gonna take him to the hospital right now. But yeah.
It reminded me a lot of, and I don't know if either of you have seen this movie before, because it reminded me a lot of the movie Vampire's Kiss with Nick Cage. And
I've just seen the clips online.
It is the genesis of like the stereotype of Nick Cage. It's where it's born in its like purest form. It's amazing. And he gets like he thinks he's turning into a vampire, and he just goes complete gaga for like, you know, an hour and a half, and is doing just like crazy physical, and like no one's restraining him. The director, like at this point, like Nick Cage is like a burgeoning star, so it's like the first time somebody just let him go and do his thing. And I kind of feel that's what happened here. I feel like that the director was just like to Tom Hardy, just you do you, and you and he's coming up with all these ideas, and he's doing all of this like these weird like facial tics and the body stuff, and it's really hard to describe in a podcast. But the clips, if you ever see it, and I do recommend you see this movie. We'll get to that later, but yeah, his physicality is out of this world.
That's
literally.
why he's one of my favorite actors, because he does the physicalities he does for each character that he takes on. Like what the Revenant, you know, I mean, he just completely embodied that guy. I mean, everything he does, he always, like we keep saying, he always goes 100% in. And I knew when he was going to be doing this role that, you know, the facial expressions, the body contorting, and I mean, that shit is exhausting, you know. Like, just watching him, I was thinking like, oh my god, he's just working so hard, but it paid off, and it was great.
You know what I think is really interesting too, and I look at, you know, because he was executive producer of this movie, and he probably had a lot of say so over what went into the story. And I look at sort of things that he had a hand in making in the past. Bronson was like his big breakout role where he played like the most notorious criminal in English history. And then the TV show Taboo, which he
so great
came up with. So all of those movies, and I think probably his best ones, are all about a man's descent into complete madness. And I think that that's like really the topic that he wants to explore and wants to act out, is like a man going from like, I'm an okay guy, to complete another like chaos mentally. So
yeah, I agree with all of that. I think the funny thing too is we're talking about it, and I think everything you're saying is right, and he's doing all of this in the service of what is just some utter nonsense. I think that's what makes the movie what it is, because he's just going like batshit in this movie, and it does kind of come out of nowhere, but it's also just so big in the world that Venom is inhabiting. I think that maybe is the thing, like the context of everything going, because in like a superhero movie, everything's kind of elevated, but this movie, like everything around him is like really kind of just earnest and played completely straight. And he's the only thing that's like just going off the walls, which makes sense. But at the same time, it's really just tonally, it's weird to me.
Yes, it does. Because there are moments where it's a pretty dark film. I mean, just kind of like texture wise. And there is, but also at the same time, there is an attempt for levity. At one time, Venom calls Eddie Brock a pussy. Like, and there's like little like jokes in between the two of them, which don't really work. But yeah, I know what you're saying, and I think that's one of the reasons they fall flat, is because they've kind of composed this world of like I don't know, kind of grittiness somewhere in between a bright and shiny Marvel movie and a Zack Snyder Superman Batman movie, like where one is the two extremes. It's kind of in the middle there.
Yeah, like I don't think the director fully decided which one of those he wanted to do, and not that you need to do one or the other, but that's where I saw some flaws in that. You know, Michelle Williams, the Doctor, and Riz Ahmed. It just, they were so serious, and everything was just so realistic, and then you have Cuckoo Tom Hardy and Venom. It didn't match up and make as much sense as it should have.
Right, yeah, because that shift happens so abruptly
Mhm.
that once it does, like, I mean, it caught me off guard. I was like, oh boy, here we go. And then we're off to the races. It's almost like the reverse of Hancock, the Will Smith movie, where the first half is really light and funny and has this weird take on it, and then
First
the last
half's
half
great,
is
yeah.
and then the second half is this just kind of stoic, generic nonsense. And I feel this is the reverse of that.
Mm-hmm.
We
No,
get-
absolutely.
Yeah. So, if you can survive that first half, you're in for a treat, I think. But yeah, I think you're right. One of the things that let's talk about Venom for a minute then, because you'd mentioned once Venom inhabits Eddie Brock, and I think this was the choice that maybe took the leap from being just an interesting movie to like a what the fuck movie. And that's the voiceover of Venom, like hearing his voice talk to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
that was Tom Hardy's voice, right? Just auto-tuned or whatever.
It was really? Was that really his? Oh, I didn't realize that. That's awesome.
Yep, it was his voice, and it's him as as Venom. He provided the physical, makeup for when Venom shows up. But yeah, it's his voice.
Yeah, and Venom loves to say the fucking word Eddie. Like every Eddie, I gotta do this, Eddie. The friend I was seeing it with, when Michelle Williams and where I might be jumping ahead shows up as She-Venom. My friend leaned over to me and just went, "I'm horny, Eddie."
Yeah, no, let's get to that moment because we talked about it earlier about this being a romance between Venom and Eddie Brock, and it's made crystal clear at the moment. I feel the only reason that Venom inhabits Michelle Williams's body, and that moment only happens so that Eddie Brock can make out with Venom.
Yeah,
that's absolutely right. Yes,
right.
Yep.
And it is. I'm like, how is this happening in a $100 million superhero movie? That I mean, I guess progress. Is that what this is? I'm just very confused by that. Just that whole thing. To say nothing of the fact that when Venom takes over Michelle Williams's body, it's got to turn her into like the comic book version of Michelle Williams's body.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Which is just, I'm like, Venom. Why would we? Yeah, now we get sexy Venom.
Yeah, Venom with boobs. Venom with very strange.
Yeah. It was pretty great. If I'm going to be completely honest with you guys.
It looks awesome. Yeah.
Well, like also there's like a weird and you guys might feel free to correct me. It's like there's this weird psychosexual game that goes on with in their debate like later on, where he asked her about the kiss and she's just like, "That wasn't me kissing you. It was the alien kissing you." And then Tom Hardy kind of has this response that's just kind of like, "Hey, either way is cool with me."
Exactly.
He's like, "Right on, I got kissed."
He is open-minded as hell.
Yeah.
What's
Man,
also
woman, alien, whatever.
Yeah.
And what's also interesting about like the love story aspect of this movie, and actually I thought it was a really cool thing, but where she says, "Eddie, I'm sorry about Venom," which like hit when I was just kind of like, oh, that's what this is about. It's a movie about friendship. The logical starting point for that would be Eddie in the beginning doesn't have any friends. Eddie in the comic books doesn't really have any friends. He's not a liked person. And he's able to make a friend by the end of it and loses that friend, maybe not. That's what the movie is about. There's no real setup for that in the beginning, but it is a really kind of, I think, sweet thought at the end of it that, oh, it was about friendship the entire time. Not really, but that's what it should have been about.
Yeah, no, I think you're right there. And I think they could have cleaned that up in that first half with that exposition. Because I think the point was that, yeah, he loses his girlfriend, he loses his job, he has nothing. And Venom ultimately makes him, gives him something to connect to, literally and metaphorically.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't get that because he is, Eddie Brock is pretty much a dick in the first half of the movie. He's not terrible. I don't think he's a terribly likable guy. And yet he's our protagonist. And that's always what gets me is when they call things an they call Venom an anti-hero. And it's like, he's not an anti-hero. He does everything that good guys do. He just like has an attitude about it. And that apparently makes you an anti-hero.
I mean, anti-heroes are still relatable. Like, Deadpool can be considered an anti-hero, and he's relatable as fuck. Like, we love everything that guy does. Eddie Brock is the least interesting aspect of the entire movie. Venom, by far, is the thing that everybody is excited to see and wants to see. Even the scenes where it's inhabited an old Malaysian lady.
Right. That's
far more entertaining than watching Eddie Brock have to go through his song and dance with the Chinese lady at the bodega, and that's none of that is interesting. With he might be the least interesting part. Well, actually, the villain's pretty uninspiring as well too. But that's here or there.
Right. Yeah, and so when you get to that friendship that forms between the two of them, it also happens really fast, which is the other thing because, and I guess some of this is marketing and expectation, but because my only context with Venom was as one of the villains of Spider-Man 3, that Venom itself would be a villain and that Eddie Brock would be fighting against Venom. But that doesn't happen at all.
I mean, that's what I thought coming in. I still don't really understand what Venom's purpose is, or I know that I know they talked about it a little bit. He wanted to come to Earth and like eventually take over Earth or something, but then he meets Eddie and now they're friends. So he's like, oh, maybe I won't destroy your world now or something.
Yeah, I don't have any clue what or at least it was really confusing where he says like I'm gonna destroy your world, or that's what me and my fucking symbiote friends are doing. And then he says, oh, by the way I've changed my mind for seemingly no reason.
So then how does Spider-Man fit into all of this, or is this just a movie standing on its own? Or, you know what I mean? Like,
well, I can tell you originally the intent before Sony merged or before Marvel got the rights back to Spider-Man, this was because Venom itself, this movie has a pretty rocky production history. Once Spider-Man 3 happened, there was talk of a Venom spinoff all the way back then. And then as like that franchise got removed and then they rebooted Spider-Man, they put Venom on the back burner, and then they were like, okay, now we can do Venom, but then they lost Spider-Man. So they're like, well, we lost Venom's main antagonist. We lost his main reason for existing, but we're just gonna push ahead anyway.
Yeah. No,
I guess definitely. I didn't realize they didn't have this rights to Spider-Man anymore.
Yeah, because Spider-Man's been absorbed into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which they have made very clear, and it's really kind of funny. Marvel has made very clear that Venom has no continuity within the MCU timeline.
Yeah, I think I think that Marvel is leasing. So Sony still owns Spider-Man. From my understanding, there was quite a push to have Spider-Man in this movie, the Tom Holland version of it, and included in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But I think that's where they shut it down.
Yeah. We don't want part of.
We know it's your character, but please don't fuck this up for us. Please don't fuck this up for us.
Right. Yeah. Which is why you're getting that cartoon Spider-Man movie in 2 months. The end of the Spider-Verse, which you do get a tease of at the very, very end credits. We'll circle back to that so Venom can't fight Spider-Man. So instead he's going to help Eddie Brock with his love life.
Yeah.
That's
right.
It's like the movie Inner Space, Lou. You love that movie.
Oh God, I love Inner. It is. It is. Oh, it's all of these great '80s movies.
Venom is Dennis Quaid, and Tom Hardy is Martin Short. I mean, that couldn't be more clear.
It writes itself.
Yeah,
man, they were taking All of Me, Inner Space. There's a touch of, I think there's a touch of Little Shop of Horrors in here.
Oh, sure,
definitely.
sure.
Yeah.
You know, Venom's always asking. He's hungry. Could have just well. Yeah. So yeah, and so Venom's able, because the premise is these symbiotes are able to, they can go into life forms, but like organ donors, as explained in the movie, they can match. There has to be the right match, and so if they're not, they kill whatever they're on and latch on. So we get like different. We get sexy Venom. At one point, we get Venom as a dog.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Again, just insanity.
Venom as an 8-year-old little blonde girl.
Venom is an 8-year-old. We get we get a symbiote old Malaysian lady. We get all of these different forms, and then eventually what it comes down to is good symbiote versus bad symbiote, because there's no real ever denying Venom's always the good guy. He's not an evil character, which is, from what I understand, a complete shift from his character in the comic books, because he ends up showing down with Riz Ahmed's character, Carlton Drake, who gets Riot is the other symbiote, the bad symbiote's name.
Yeah. Apparently, so the symbiotes are members of the race of Clintar from another planet, and there are bad ones and that there are good ones, and that they have their own civil wars and love-hate relationships and things like that, and they all have their very distinct personalities. So I think that's where the antagonism between apparently they have like cool 1990s skateboarding names too, like on their planet, Riot and Venom going at it.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like American Gladiator names. So explain to me, what did Riot wanted Venom to be on his side and team up to destroy Earth?
Yeah, my guess is, so I'm going to say what I think the symbiote's plan was to come to Earth. No. They were taken by a spaceship.
Correct.
Yeah.
Earth,
okay.
Take over the Earth, or as what they could take over the Earth, then commandeer another spaceship, go back to their planet, bring more symbiotes back to Earth, and colonize it. That's what I think the symbiote's plan was.
Yes, that's correct, and that then dovetails with Riz Ahmed's character of wanting a symbiote to essentially take him over so that he could get off of the planet, because that's the other just throwaway lines in this movie, that apparently the world's about to end. He got that climate change report about a couple weeks before the rest of us did, and he's like,
Well,
I'm getting the fuck out of here. And that's basically, the world's ending soon. I need to go to another planet, and the best way I can do this is have this symbiote take over my body and send me back with them.
What's troubling about Riz Ahmed's character as well is that he's sinister because they want him to be sinister. There's there's this very loose guiding philosophy on why science is the advancement of the thing, and you have to make an omelet, you have to crack some eggs. So I'm going to kill a bunch of homeless people this way. That's why he's bad, but he's not. He's just kind of bad through these long, exhaustive monologues about why he's doing the right thing, and you walk this kind of fine line because, as other superhero movies have shown us, that movies like The Dark Knight, Black Panther, their villains are way more interesting than the main character. They have to have, Riz Ahmed has to be a good enough villain to where we want to see him face down Tom Hardy, but at the same time cannot make him more compelling than Tom Hardy, which is not very fucking hard to do in this movie. So.
Yeah. No, and I think you're right, and they don't give him much to do, and so it is. I think that character, that villain, it's this movie. This movie is not about the villain. There's just no way around it. No one's walking away from this movie saying, you know, what really made that movie work was Carlton Drake. That's a great villain.
I mean, he's completely forgettable. I would dare anybody 5 minutes after they get out of that movie theater to tell us why Riz Ahmed was doing the things that he was doing in that movie.
You're walking out of that theater. If you're thinking about anything else other than live lobsters and tater tots, I think you just missed the point of the movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, you're right. I think he's pretty rote in this as a villain. I think Michelle Williams, as we mentioned earlier, is kind of, she's just kind of there.
Listen, I think she's super taluted. I very much enjoy her. I thought she was garbage in this movie. Like it seemed like she's thought to herself, "Oh, I'm going to be in a superhero movie. This is how actors in superhero movies walk and talk." And her wig was terrible.
That was a wig, right?
I think so. I mean, it was
awful.
I just thought she was putting on this caricature of, oh, I'm playing the girl in a superhero movie, and I just thought she was garbage. I'm sorry, Michelle. I mean, did not like her.
Sorry, Michelle. We already forgave you for killing Heath Ledger.
No. Oh, God, edit that out.
I'm sorry, I get her confused with Courtney Love.
Wow.
Ooh, this just took a turn I did not want to take.
Yeah, you're right though, because I do think, it shows that these kind of genre movies, there's a different just approach to it, I think, as an actor, and some people match really well with it and some people don't, and not to her credit, she's not given a lot to do or a lot to work with. She's not, she is a very just generic girlfriend character. There's nothing there's not much interesting on the page about her character either. So, unless she gives her some like sort of, unique tick on her own as an actor, I don't know if she's going to elevate it that much, but she's part of the plot element of this movie that just makes it that really kind of drags the rest of the fun down.
Yeah, and it never has to be her doing anything. Like it's Spider-Man, it has to be Mary Jane because that's what motivates him. It doesn't have to be Michelle Williams or her character in any of the scenes whatsoever. It could be, and let's be honest, in the forest where she becomes She-Venom and she comes to his rescue, it could have just as easily been any other character. It didn't have to be her. It could have been the fucking dog. But they wanted to show us Venom boobs, which I'm happy for.
Exactly. Yeah, thank God they shied away from the R rating, because who knows even how more detailed Venom boobs could have been.
It would have been. I would love to see. I saw a hashtag that was "Release the Hardy Cut," which I guess is the R-rated version of this, where they just went even more insane before Sony said, "No, we have to make our money back." We're not doing this.
Yeah, because Tom Hardy went on a press junket last week and said all of his favorite parts of the film were cut out.
I'm sure they were.
Yeah. So there's like about 40 minutes of cutting room floor footage that I cannot wait to see.
It's gonna be great. Can we make a promise that if it comes out on streaming or whatever, and we all get a chance to see the bonus features, we can have like a little mini episode about just the cut scenes and what could have been.
Yes, we will definitely. Yeah, we'll do that. I will pencil that in for when it's on streaming in like 4 weeks.
Sure.
Right.
But yeah, and I think that's the other thing too is you mentioned it earlier, Sam, was about the director. a lot of people just kind of not knowing what they were going for, and that speaks to it too, because I think there was debate internally, I know, about whether or not this was going to be an R-rated superhero movie or not, if they wanted to go darker or edgier. And then, as you said, Christian, no, there's like, well, no, we got to make money on this thing, because so they cut it back to PG-13. And I think that just is one of the reasons that this movie is just so all over the place tonally, is they didn't know who their audience they didn't know who their audience was going to be or who they wanted it to be, and so they're just throwing a lot of shit at the wall.
Right. And it seems like, Venom is such a crude character that but they still wanted it to be a movie that, I guess, kids could see, parents could take them to it. It was hard for them to, I think, tone it down to the PG-13. I mean, he called him a pussy. He said fuck one time. There was lots of times when I was like, oh my God, there are kids in this theater. But I also don't know if it would have gotten the same, I guess, response. If it was R, I would have expected a lot more. It would have been a lot darker. It would have been a lot grittier. And I think probably trying too hard to be in the Dark Knight vein, I don't know if it would have worked. The switching from Tom Hardy to Venom and the kookiness of that. I don't know if they would have made it edgier. I don't think it would have worked as well.
It's interesting that the line where he says "fuck," I think it is. I'm probably wrong. Where I think he says "fuck it." I guess it's time to save the world.
Yep.
Which pretty much sums up the entire movie. Which is just kind of like, we're out of ideas. Fuck it. We'll plug this in, and we'll try to do a movie about saving the world. I guess I'll save the world. I might make a sandwich. I might save the world.
Yeah, exactly.
World.
Yeah, that's how he's edgy. He'll say, I guess I'll save the world. Whatever. Right. We'll just,
I've got so many fucking cool wristbands on. It doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah, and I think if they had gone an R, I don't think they could gone R with this plot, because I think that's the other thing too, is in the franchise age, to me, when I walked into this movie, I thought this was going to be a movie about Eddie Brock versus Venom and him trying to get Venom out and defeat Venom and kill, or whatever. And I could see that like as a one-off, like R-rated movie. I could see that working. But when Venom essentially is playing Cyrano de Bergerac for Eddie Brock,
that's perfect. Yeah.
That's not gonna get you the R. That's not that's not the edge that you need for your R-rated superhero. So I mean, if this was the script that was turned in and they just toned the violence down to keep it PG-13, I think they made the right choice.
And I think obviously they want to do sequels. They set it up for that incredibly. I think if it was the Eddie versus Venom, trying to get him out and get rid of him, that's kind of your end stop right there. There wouldn't have been probably too many other, paths you could have taken to get those sequels. So I think that's probably another reason why they didn't R-rate it.
Right. So you mentioned it, so let's get to it. There is 100% a setup for Venom 2. It's the first of 2 post-credit scenes. And in it, we get Eddie Brock going to Alcatraz to interview someone, and it turns out to be Woody Harrelson in, wait for it, a red clown wig.
Yeah, he scalped Ronald McDonald and then put it on his own head.
Okay, full disclosure, I went to the bathroom at this point. I did not see this. I came back and my boyfriend was like, "Oh my God, Woody Harrelson is going to be in the sequel." I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" So I'm going to take a step back since I don't know what the fuck you guys are talking about.
Oh, you do yourself. It's got to be online somewhere.
I'll look it up.
Because it teases what I really hope this next movie is, and that is Tom Hardy and Woody Harrelson just trying to out wackadoo each other.
Oh yeah.
is my dream.
Yeah, and I am totally on board for that.
Because you have Tom Hardy, who is now one with the symbiote, right? Is capable of doing whatever his fucking psychotic mind can come up with. And then you have Cletus Cassidy, aka Carnage, who is a serial killer who is inhabited by a symbiote who just drives him insane. And then or even more so insane, and is able to let him, it's like it amplifies his worst tendencies, whatever that trope. And then they are going to go at it. It's going to be fantastic. That's what Carnage kind of forces Venom to become a good guy in the end, because I believe Carnage is the offspring of Venom. So the symbiotes reproduce asexually, and Cletus Cassidy and Eddie Brock are in jail together. Venom escapes, but not before the symbiote reproduces, and then that symbiote takes over and becomes Carnage. So Venom has a sense of responsibility of having to stop this person that he created.
I'm gonna stop you there just for a minute, because clearly in this film, the symbiotes reproduce by making out with Tom Hardy.
Oh yeah, that's correct. That's absolutely correct.
That's how they mate. Yeah.
I think you're wrong, Christian.
Sorry, don't mean to fact check you. Be that.
That's fine. I'm okay with that dramatic license that Tom Hardy has to separate. He has to separate from his symbiote, have it inhabit somebody else, and then fuck that person as the symbiote.
It's high drama.
Yeah,
that is Shakespearean.
Yeah,
but yeah, and that's where I could see this franchise going, because I think this movie, I don't think is anywhere as, it doesn't have the depth of character or the real the great the structure or the writing behind a lot of the great MCU movies. But I am on board with this being like the white trash cousin of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, like, yeah, it's trashy. We're gonna invite him to Thanksgiving because you don't know. He's still family. We'll bring it, and like a whole Venom, especially with Woody Harrelson as your insane villain. That's. You've got my money. Here you go. There's my congratulations, Venom. You got me to be excited for a sequel to a movie I didn't really want to see in the first place.
I've been pushing for a Tom Hardy, Woody Harrelson vehicle, so I'm very pumped for this. I don't know a thing about it. I continue to hate superhero movies, but they got me. They got me in.
So what is the second post-credit scene? Because I only stayed for the first one.
So the second post-credit scene, and it has nothing to do with Venom. It's just an extended 5-minute scene from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where we see one of the Spider-Men, and again, I don't know all of their names, guys. I don't read the comics, people.
Whatever.
Hate tweet me at the fake Lou Hair, but he is visiting Peter Parker's grave. So you learn that Peter Parker is dead, and so I don't know.
It's all a cartoon.
It's all a cartoon.
Yeah,
it's all animated. And then cops are chasing him, and then he gets caught, picked up by somebody else, by another Spider-Man. So it teases this idea that there are multiple Spider-Men, which at the trailers that I saw, they already had a trailer for that movie for it in the first place that gave you that reveal. So. That's all it was, and it was like a to be continued, and it, like I said, it was apropos of nothing. But still,
it looked like there was a Spider Girl maybe that showed up at that.
Yeah, Spider Gwen.
Spider Gwen. Okay. Yeah. It looked like it was more for kids. I don't know. It wasn't like super intriguing or like, I don't know, rad in any way, but
Well, it actually might be really smart if they can't use Tom Holland Spider-Man, the one finally the one that they kind of got right and are using very effectively with the Marvel movies. If they, if they have set up the thing that this is a multiverse thing and this Venom is taking place in a different universe, they can use Spider-Gwen. They can use Miles Morales, who is the African-American Spider-Man. They can use Spider-Pig if they want to. There's a number of they can use.
Excuse me. There's a Spider Pig.
There is a Spider Pig,
voiced by John Mulaney.
Yeah.
Okay. I do like superhero movies, turns out.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah.
We got
Yeah.
superheroes. Got everything. They got Tom Hardy. They got John Mulaney. They got Don Cheadle. I mean, all the guys that are driving girls crazy right now.
Sam, you're going to be the first and only person to stan the Sony superhero franchises.
Yep, that's me.
You're like, I'm not all about the Avengers, but
No.
have you seen Venom?
Love it.
Someone has to carry that banner. And I
proudly.
So just a couple of quick things on it. So this movie has not been well received by critics. Its current Rotten Tomatoes score is 29%. And it's all over the map from, it's a boring, it's anywhere from it's good, bad to it's just bad. IMDb gives it its score right now is at 7.1. But it was pretty successful in its opening weekend. It made $80 million. As of this recording, it's made $229 million worldwide. So it's gonna ultimately, I think it's gonna turn a profit. And it's probably going to justify that sequel that it sets up. So I don't think we're done with Venom. It's, and I think that's the interesting thing, because this movie, when it came out, the weeks leading up to it were like, okay, how bad is this going to be? How bad is it going to bomb? And, I think they've shown they were at least really smart about the timing of this release, because there hasn't been a superhero movie for a couple of months, and there isn't one coming up for another couple of months. So they kind of hit a real good sweet spot when there was an audience demand, at least.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple of we talked about Tom Hardy's interest in the movie. We talked about the R rating. The other thing that I wanted to get to was that Topher Grace has actually come out and praised Tom Hardy's performance as Venom. So
it's very big of him.
It was the torch has been passed, my friends.
Yeah.
So good for him.
Yes.
So Tom Hardy cites here's some so he cites as an influence on the relationship between Eddie Brock and Venom, Ren and Stimpy. He said, "I always saw Venom as a lounge lizard and Eddie Brock as an everyday kind of guy who's inherited this massive ego beast." And he based his performance on three people. And this shows that maybe Tom Hardy doesn't read the papers as much as he should.
Oh no.
Okay, so
don't ruin this for me.
The first one is Conor McGregor.
Great.
Okay.
For the taste and capability of uber violence. Redman from the Wu-Tang Clan.
Sure, of course.
And then Woody Allen.
Oh heavens.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't see that at all.
What aspect? I don't.
He says the tortured neuroses and all the humor that can come from that.
Yeah, I know. I can see the Woody Allen, or what his attempt to be like Woody Allen is that he's kind of finicky and he doesn't know what's wrong, and that's his. And it's supposed to be funny, and it's not. It's just uncomfortable.
No.
The fact that he now has cited Woody Allen as an influence, so that just makes it like much worse to me.
Yeah, I really wish we wouldn't have done this segment, Lou. Really.
Woody Allen is a fucking inspiration for someone's portrayal of Venom.
Oh. All right. Well,
all right.
We'll forget that.
We'll forget that. We will. Oh, but okay. So I'll end it with this. His influence for Venom's voice, James Brown.
Okay, and we're back.
Yep.
Great. Redeemed.
Okay.
Great.
All right. So before we wrap this up, are there any other scenes or moments that we haven't touched on that either one of you would be remiss if you didn't mention? Sam, how about you?
No, I think, I don't know why I keep on harping on Michelle Williams. Bless her heart. She's been nominated for like 4 Oscars. I thought, and again, this is the script and the direction probably, but she jumped on the Venom train like super fast. She was like, "Oh, there's an alien inside of you and you want to get it out." Yeah, that checks out. It just seemed to me like, oh, okay. And then she was like, yeah, boyfriend doctor, there's an alien inside of him and we need to get it out. Duh. Like, it seemed, I mean, that to me was the most unbelievable part, which is stupid. So, but that's just me being really picky. And I love you, Michelle Williams. Please don't tweet at me. I'm just kidding. Tweet at me.
Michelle Williams, I'm sorry I called you a murderer.
All right, Christian, how about you?
I don't know if there's any particular scene that stands out to me. I think, I think that it has kind of like the problem that most origin superhero movies have is about not getting them over that threshold for such a long period of time. There are little like nuggets within this movie of like a much better movie that it could have been if that's what it was about. And I have to say, kind of like overall, it is not a very good movie, but as far as superhero movies goes, I would say it's better than 50% of them. Okay. Over the history, and I'm including like Blade. No, not Blade. Blade is great. The Fantastic Fours, the Sam Raimi, a couple of the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans, the Andrew Garfield Spider-Mans. I think this one is it's better than a lot of them.
Yeah, I do want to say I really dug all the action scenes. Oh no. Oh, my camera turned off because my phone's dying. You can still hear me. Yeah. I really dug all the action scenes. Like the motorcycle scene was great. The scene in his apartment when he's fighting, 5 or 6 or 7 bad guys. I thought everything was super interesting and really clever fights, and I really enjoyed it all. Because you see one superhero fight, you've seen them all. Well, I guess not me because I don't see those movies, but I thought that was cool.
Okay, cool. All right. So we're going to, because this is a hybrid episode, we're going to do things a little differently. So normally on Full Disclosure, we give a rating of 1 to 10. And then on Guilty Pleasures, we go to the guilt meter, where we rank how guilty of a movie this is. So on a scale of 1 to 10 as a film, what would you give this movie? And then on the guilt meter, from 1 to 5 shame spirals, 1 being you love this movie, 5 being you either don't like this movie, or if you do, you wouldn't tell people about it. Where does Venom rank on both of your scales? Let's start with Christian.
I would have to say on my 1 to 10, it would most likely be probably about a 5. For that reason, I said earlier that it's a pretty bad movie, but there are many, as far as superhero movies goes, many that are far worse than it. As far as shame spirals go, I'm going to have to say 4, only because it's not bad enough to be a fun bad movie, and it's not good. So it exists. The entire movie exists in this weird nether region. Fuck it, man. I guess we'll save the world. Like that to me is like sums up the ethos of this film. So yeah.
Okay. How about you, Sam?
Yeah, I think as far as a film, I'd probably land on a 6. I mean, it's not. It's not The Godfather. It's not gonna, change my life and blow my mind. But I was entertained, and I was super skeptical going in, and especially the fact that it was almost 2 hours long. I was like, oh my God, why am I doing this to myself? But I was entertained, and I will see a sequel. I think if it comes out. As far as shame spirals, Christian's right. Like, it's not great enough to be a guilty pleasure because it's kind of a legit movie. So probably 3. I think I would fall in the middle. Like, I don't intend to ever see it twice. if it comes on the TV, I'll watch Tom Hardy, talk to himself for a couple minutes, but
Sure.
but yeah, probably 3 shame spirals.
Okay, yeah, I'm pretty much in the ballpark with you guys as a film because it's not. I can't say this is a good movie. There's some good things about it, and there's some interesting things. Certainly interesting things about it. But I don't think you could walk into this movie expecting to see any of the heights that we've gotten from any of the more recent superhero movies. It makes. It's probably more in line with your lower end Marvel movies, your Iron Man 3s or your,
take that back. I'm sorry. I love Iron Man 3. Okay. I love it.
Or maybe your Thor: The Dark Worlds, or
okay, that's fair. Yeah.
But that said, I would sit through this than I would either the first 2 Thor movies. So I'd at least, if it were in the MCU rankings, it'd probably rank above there for me. But as a guilty pleasure, I'm actually a little higher on it than you guys were, and maybe I'm giving the second half of this movie a lot of credit because I had a blast from the second the symbiote took over Tom Hardy, and I was on board with his just nutty performance.
Yeah, me too.
So I would say I would go about a 2.5, and I would say. I would recommend if you're a superhero movie completist and you stayed away because you thought this was just going to be some Snyder-esque debacle. I don't think it's not that, because it at least is fun. But maybe have it on in the background for the first 45 minutes, and then once you see the symbiotes taking over, then dial in. And then have a good time with that, because I thought it was, and I hope that for the sequel we can get rid of all of that, needless backstory and get straight to the batshit stuff. Because that, especially with Woody Harrelson as a villain chewing the scenery, I think that could be a heck of a lot of fun. So
yeah, I want to see.
Absolutely.
I want to see in the sequel. I want to see the symbiote reproduce. And I want to see Woody Harrelson just completely, because if his starting point is writing shit with his own blood in the jail, like the distance that we can go with that of this wild-eyed, red-headed Woody Harrelson, I think could be really, really a cinematic milestone.
And if only we could get some crossover. We're not going to get a Marvel crossover, but if we could get a Blade crossover, so we could finally get Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson on screen together again.
Yeah.
Take my money. Sony,
my fingers crossed for another version of Spider-Man. They've been looking for a way to get Miles Morales on the screen for a long. They were going to have. I think there was an attempt to have Donald Glover play him.
Yes. At
one point, but this would be great if they just established this is in a different Spider-Man universe. Then go for it. I think. Yeah. Anyways, go ahead.
That'd be great. No, so there you have it. There's our review of Venom. Hope you enjoyed it, and hope you enjoy all the other stuff that we have coming out this month. This is the second time you've heard my voice already. Last week, my latest Guilty Pleasure episode on the Poseidon Adventure dropped. I'm gonna be back one more time this month as a special crossover event with our Monster Cast series, and we're gonna be talking about the 1995 movie Ice Cream Man, starring Clint Howard.
What the hell?
It's great.
Oh, it is.
It's wonderful.
It is on YouTube. It is free. You need to watch it tonight.
Okay.
Get hopped up on cold meds and just watch.
I rented that from Blockbuster and drank maybe 3 gallons of Jolt Cola during a sleepover and watched it.
Oh, it is fantastic. I recommend you see the movie because it's for free. Watch it before the podcast drops. That'll be coming out in about 2 weeks. But in the meantime, there's all sorts of the Monster Cast series is in full swing. So you can get all of those on the main feed. And you'll get updates by following us on Facebook, Front Row Network, and on Twitter at Front Row Reviews. You can also please like and subscribe the Guilty Pleasures feed. We have our own feed, so this is going to be on the main feed and on the Guilty Pleasures feed. And as always, if you go to the Guilty Pleasures feed, if you give us a 5-star rating and review us and request a movie in the reviews, we'll do it. I paid money to see Venom in the theater. Clearly, I'll see whatever the fuck you want me to see. So do it. Just give us that review. Help boost the podcast. Help people learn about it. In the meantime, you can follow me at the Fake Lou Hair, and stay tuned for all sorts of great stuff we've got coming out in the rest of the month of October. And then in November, we've already got our guilty pleasures lined up. We're going to do the movie Fear. And we're also going to be revisiting the Rocky franchise in time for Creed 2. We're going to talk Ivan Drago and Rocky 4. So also,
Fear, you talking about the one with Mark Wahlberg?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, that's all you had to say.
Yeah. So lots of cool stuff coming up, and you can find that all if you just follow us on Facebook or go to our website, thefrontrowmoviereviews.com. Subscribe to our YouTube page, catch all that fun stuff and all the different many podcasts we've got coming out. Too many to name here, but if you've heard us once, you've heard us mention it. So definitely check out everything that we're doing. So before we go, Christian, do you got anything you want to plug or let us know about?
No. If anybody's interested, they can follow me on Twitter at Lapsed Christian, and yeah.
All right.
Or if you're in Los Angeles, come say hi.
All right. How about you, Sam? Anything you want to update us on?
Nope. I'm gonna go to sleep and knock myself out with some NyQuil.
Nice. Okay. All right. So for all of us at the Front Row Reviews, I'm Lou Hare.
I'm Christian Crosby.
I'm Sam Davina.
And as always, we'll see you in the front row. Venom, Venom,
Venom.
It's
Venom.
time to go get him.
Venom.
Venom,
Venom.
Venom.
I hate us.